When I was a kid, I had a fair amount of exposure to Sonic the Hedgehog's franchise. I would wake up in the morning, play all of Sonic and Knuckles in just a couple hours, and beat the game, with the exception of one Chaos Emerald that I never got. And I would never be able to beat the game as Knuckles. I could never figure it out. But I did beat the game as Sonic, without Emerald power. And I would watch two versions of a Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon. A goofy one with a moronic Robotnik with his two robot sidekicks, a chicken and a Drobot, which I loved, especially the Chaos Emerald five-part story. Or was it 7 parts? Either way, that was good. And a grittier, more environmentally conscious cartoon where Robotnik is a little more menacing. And while that one, I didn't really care much for that one, it was still impressive. It took a while for me to accept that Jaleel White, aka Steve Urkel, wasn't voicing Sonic anymore, but dang it if the little hedgehog didn't grow on me. And thankfully they fixed his eyes and mouth, so he looks proper. Then he was joined by Tails, and finally, Knuckles. And now we have a new guy in the mix, Shadow. Now he is something of a mystery to me. His games and cartoons I'm not really familiar with, though I do know some of his backstory, how he had a human best friend, how she passed on violently, and how he wants some kind of revenge. So this is sort of a proper introduction to the character for me. And I think Keanu Reeves, aka Neo, the One, did a pretty darn good job of giving life to this formerly two-dimensional character. Yes, that's a joke based on the fact that Sonic started out as a flat video game, side-scroller. So, the third installment of the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. Not only have we had 2 movies, but also a miniseries surrounding Knuckles. And honestly, it did not disappoint. Once again, Jim Carrey comes back as Dr. Robotnik, and he plays his own grandfather. The grandfather who is also related to the human girl that Shadow was friends with, whom he lost. Now, I don't know much about the Robotnik parentage. Like, are Evo and the girl siblings or half-siblings? But I do know this. Jim Carrey plays very well against himself. I totally believed that someone had somehow created 2 Jim Carreys to play both roles. Both characters are similar, but different enough that you believe you're seeing 2 people. As for the rest of the cast, the voices of Sonic, Knuckles, and Tails all did a great job. I mean, I never really contemplated Knuckles' voice, but Idris Elba really brings the character life. I think her name is Maureen O'Shaughnessy. She voices Tails, and she's voiced the character for a long time, possibly all the way back to when I was watching their cartoons. And she's good as a fox. And of course, Sonic himself still arrogant but charming, but able to see his own flaws and rise above them. Overall, the voice characters and Jim Carrey did a pretty good job. Not to mention James Marsters and his co-star were pretty decent as a married couple. Then we get various other characters. Kristen Ritter shows up as a military character. She's passable. Basically, all the side characters do a good job. The effects are decent. For the most part, Sonic, Knuckles, Tails, Shadow, they're all believable as real beings. It's a little shaky at times, but overall, they do feel as if they've leapt out of the game world. The various settings, the small town of Green Hills, still gorgeous, slice of Americana. Tokyo, Japan, flashy, foreign, fun. Britain, I was hoping to see a couple of cameos from Doctor Who alumni, but no go. And one area that really felt like it came out of one of the games, I'm not going to spoil it, but it was impressive. Overall, the settings were varied, beautiful, and colorful. And unique in their own way. The story is basically Robotnik's back, he found his grandpa. They team up with Shadow to try and get revenge on the world for the death of either Anne or Alice. Her name starts with an A. Basically, the Robotnik granddaughter. And it's up to Sonic and his friends and family to stop the bad guys from making a terrible mistake. And overall, the story delivered. It was fairly fast-paced, and it didn't drag in places. I was never bored. So yeah, they set up for a fourth film, and I find it interesting with what they're doing, since let's just say the story ended on an interesting note. And if they do a fourth film, it's going to be a break from what we've had so far. It might be good, it might be bad, but at the very least, this film ended on a fairly high note. The story itself is full of good pathos, but a lot of good lighthearted moments too. And I think hardcore fans of Shadow the Hedgehog are going to be fairly satisfied. Just like I was fairly satisfied with the first two films and this one. This is Mr. J signing out, reminding you the 90s are only the second best decade ever. Second only to the 80s. And don't let any 80s babies, 90s kids tell you otherwise. Oh, and I really don't like being called a millennial. I prefer 90s kid. Because trust me, the 90s were the pinnacle. Cheers, folks. And never stop playing the games you love. Got a dash.